The 2026 disappearances, February 27, 2026, Albuquerque, New Mexico, 11 a.m., retired Major General William Neil McCasland walks out of his front door. He is 69 years old, former commander of the Air Force Research Laboratory, the primary engine of classified aerospace research in the United States government. A man of rigid military discipline who spent decades handling programs that do not appear in any public record. Before leaving, he places his phone on the counter, his prescription glasses, every wearable tracking device he owns. He takes his wallet and a .38 caliber revolver. His wife returns 2 hours later to a silent house. 10 days after that, a search team finds a gray Air Force sweatshirt caught on a thorn bush 1.2 miles from his front door. No blood, no signs of a struggle, just fabric in the desert and nothing else. For most people, this is a missing persons case. For the intelligence community, it has a different name, a silent vector. McCasland isn't the first, he is the 11th. To understand what that number means, you have to resist the instinct to treat each case separately. That instinct is exactly what the official narrative depends on. Start with Monica Jacinto Reza. She was a senior aerospace engineer at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Her most significant contribution was the co-development of Mondalloy, a specialized nickel-based alloy engineered to survive the extreme thermal stress of next-generation rocket engines. On June 22, 2025, she was hiking the Mount Waterman Trail in Angeles National Forest with 2 experienced companions. At 9:10 a.m., her friend, walking 30 feet ahead, turned and looked back down the trail. Monica was there. She smiled, she waved. The friend looked forward for less than 60 seconds. When he turned around again, the trail was empty. No scream, no sound of a fall. Search teams deployed FLIR thermal cameras, drones, and K-9 units across the surrounding terrain for months. Not one piece of her equipment, her backpack, her jacket, her boots, was ever recovered. Monica Jacinto Reza did not fall off a trail. She was removed from one. Amy Eskridge co-founded the Institute for Exotic Science in Huntsville, Alabama. Her research focus was propellantless propulsion, what others would call anti-gravity. In the years before her death in 2022, she contacted independent researchers outside of institutional channels. She described deliberate harassment, the sabotage of her experiments. She told people explicitly that progress in her field did not lead to recognition. It led to disappearances. Her death was ruled a suicide. What she was working toward, a propulsion system requiring no fuel source, would, if validated, render obsolete the multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure underpinning the entire aerospace and defense sector. Every classified launch program, every directed energy platform, every system that currently depends on conventional propulsion physics. Her father, a NASA veteran, accepted the verdict. The Institute for Exotic Science no longer operates. By April 2026, the pattern had outgrown local jurisdiction. The White House issued a directive, citing what were described as legitimate and troubling questions. President Trump ordered a holistic interagency review. The FBI, NASA, and the Department of Energy were placed in the same room for the first time. Their brief was to identify commonalities across 11 cases spanning 3 years and 5 major research institutions. Read through the names in that briefing document slowly. Frank Mywald, NASA scientist, died July 2024. Melissa Casillas, administrative staff at Los Alamos National Laboratory, disappeared June 2025 near Talpa, New Mexico. Nuno Loureiro, director of the MIT Plasma Science and Fusion Center, shot December 2025. Carl Grillmeyer, Caltech astrophysicist, killed February 2026. A propulsion expert from Los Alamos, a galactic stellar streams researcher, a directed energy specialist, and the former commander of the Air Force Research Laboratory, last seen walking into the New Mexico desert with a revolver and no way to call for help. When Congressman Eric Burleson formally questioned the Pentagon about these overlapping profiles, the response was one sentence: "We do not comment on ongoing personnel matters." That is the kind of answer you give when the real answer is worse than the question. Casillas and her colleague Chavez were not peripheral figures. Los Alamos is the birthplace of the atomic bomb. It is currently one of the primary sites for nuclear stockpile maintenance and next-generation weapons, physics research in the country. People embedded in those programs do not walk off the edge of the map by accident. The first attempt to contain the story framed these as mental health crises. That framing collapsed immediately under the weight of the professional profiles. These were not people in distress. These were active researchers with current clearances embedded in programs that officially do not exist. The second attempt framed it as random crime. That held for approximately one news cycle. So the question that the institutional wall was constructed to prevent, the obvious one, the one every journalist who covered these cases eventually stopped asking out loud, is this: what did 11 people across 5 institutions all know, and who needed them to stop knowing it? To find that answer, you have to look at the one commonality that appears in none of their job titles: access. McCasland's name has circulated for years in UAP disclosure communities, not because of anything he said publicly, because of what multiple independent sources, including individuals who testified before Congress under oath in 2023 and 2024, described him as overseeing. In that community, he was called the keeper of the materials. The claim, consistent across a decade and sourced from people with no reason to coordinate their accounts, is this: the United States government holds in its possession materials recovered from craft that did not originate on Earth. To understand those materials, to analyze the alloys, the structural logic, the energy signatures embedded in them, requires the best metallurgical engineers alive. Engineers like Monica Reza. To replicate the propulsion of those craft, or to build functional analogs, requires advances in physics that conventional aerospace science cannot currently explain. Researchers like Amy Eskridge. If that program exists, and the sworn testimony in front of Congress suggests it does, then these 11 individuals were not simply scientists. They were the most sensitive human assets in any such program, and the most dangerous the moment any of them decided the work belonged to the public rather than to the program. 6 months after Monica Jacinto Reza vanished from a trail in Angeles National Forest, a satellite monitoring station at Diego Garcia reportedly logged an automated handshake signal from a classified transponder. A signal that should not have existed from a person who was not there. There are 2 interpretations. The first is a corrupted data packet from a decommissioned system, a ghost in the machine that happened to match a classified frequency by coincidence. The second is that these scientists were not lost, that they were moved, that the silence following their disappearances is not the silence of tragedy, but the silence of transition into programs so classified that the personnel inside them cease to formally exist. Robert Bartholomew is a medical sociologist. He has written extensively on apophenia, the human tendency to construct meaningful patterns from unrelated data. His position on cases like these is consistent. We are filling the gaps with narrative because gaps are psychologically intolerable. It is a serious argument. It would be more persuasive if the gaps themselves were not so specific. McCasland was a former military commander, trained to assess threat environments, a man who, by every account from colleagues and family, did not make impulsive decisions. He left without his glasses, without his phone, without any means of navigation or communication, with a revolver. Either he was walking towards something he was afraid of, or he was walking away from something worse than what was coming for him. Those are the only two options. Neither of them is a coincidence. As of April 2026, the silver alert for William Neil McCasland remains active. The Angeles National Forest Service has issued no update on Monica Jacinto Reza. The Institute for Exotic Science is a memory. The interagency review ordered by the White House has produced no public findings. 11 names, 3 years, 5 institutions, one pattern that every agency with jurisdiction over these cases has declined to name out loud. The data these people generated still exists somewhere. Research logs, access records, materials assessments, program files buried deep enough that no standard request ever surfaces them. Data does not disappear when a person does, it gets reclassified. What happens when the only people capable of explaining what that data means are no longer available? What happens when the architects of the next century are removed from the map one by one and the official response is silence? We are left with 11 names and no answers. And the silence is getting louder. Go back, look at the dates, look at the specialties, look at what they knew and when they disappeared. The pattern is there. This is the Forbidden X archive. Have a good night.